Hi, I'm Greg Ullin with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. Today is a great conversation ahead of us. I get to sit down with Zach Doran. He's the president at Ohio Automobile Dealers Association. He's also the executive vice president of the Columbus Automobile Dealers Association. So, Zach, thanks so much for joining me.
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, Zach, I wanted to get into a really cool charitable event that you all hosted just last weekend. And I think these are important because it goes, I think outside of our industry, especially, it goes a little unnoticed how involved dealers are in their communities and how much they really give back, how much they support. And it's a really important part of our industry. So I was hoping you could start there. You all put on a great concert in Columbus called Concert for a Cause. I think this was the second year. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how it came about, bringing it back, just wherever you want to head with it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you highlighting it. It was the second year of Concert for a Cause. We stood it up on kind of short notice last year, and it's really the pivot or the reinvention of our charitable event that we used to hold in conjunction with the Columbus Auto Show. As many folks who will watch this podcast are familiar, there are some headwinds in the auto show business, and we've paused the Columbus Auto Show, but that auto show always had a charitable included with it, and it was always a private industry only event, right? So, vendors, dealers, just folks in the industry that showed up, and we raised a lot of money for charity. And, pausing the auto show, sort of, the silver lining here, I suppose, is that it gave us an opportunity to kind of reinvent our charitable event, because our dealers were adamant that they wanted to continue that. And so, we pitched this idea of hosting a charity benefit concert, but making it a public show. So for the artists that play that show, it represents their public tour stop in Columbus. And we had a great night. We raised a lot of money this weekend for charity Newsies, who clothes children in need around Central Ohio. They'll clothe about 18,000 kids with everything from socks to underwear and all the basics, pants and things like that for kind of back to school. And then Canine Companions, that everyone's probably more familiar with, their Central Ohio region, training highly skilled service dogs for veterans and children and just folks in need, and all the recipients. They don't pay for any of that, any of those dogs. So we raised enough money to fully fund a dog for them, which was great. We were over $100,000 for the event this weekend, presented the checks on the stage, and everybody had a great time listening to Trey Pendley and Chase Rice and Chris Young. So I think between those artists, we had like 14 or 16 number one hits. So we're pretty legitimate artists, and the lawn was very full, and it was a great night for our dealers and for all the attendees. We're going to be in discussions here about if there's going to be a year 3, but we'll see. We'll have that pretty soon. I feel comfortable that I think we'll be bringing it back, but we'll see what happens here. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And a great venue too. Outdoor venue for people not familiar with Columbus, right downtown in the Arena District. I mean, literally the block next to the ballpark where the Clippers play. So it's been just a great, honestly, that whole district for the last, it's probably been about 20, how old's the arena? 25 years old, something like that?
Yeah, it is. It's surprising. I mean, it doesn't look that old, but it is surprisingly like 25 years old or so. And yeah, Kemba's great. It's a great little amphitheater down there. We run the event in a very cool fashion. The amphitheater is structured in such a way that the stage can actually be used to play outdoors to like a grass lawn, a VIP, like a pit area, and then a grass lawn that holds about 5,000 people all in. But the artists in the wintertime can actually turn around. They can close the big doors on the backside and they can play indoors. And so we run the event by having both venues utilized, and we have a VIP party for all the industry people on the inside. So all the dealers, all the vendors, all the sponsors that work with car dealers. And I mention that because maybe there's some folks watching this that want to participate in that in future years, but all the Columbus dealers are there. A bunch of their key managers and folks are there. and everybody's just having a good time. And then about the time the artists hit the stage, they walk around the front and everybody has a pit ticket that's in the VIP, and we sell lawn seats, and you can buy a pit ticket as a member of the general public, but you can't buy a VIP ticket. So all of that with the party and the open bar and the food spread and private restrooms and all that stuff, that all comes through us. So it's a good hybrid for us of kind of what used to be our industry only private gala event in conjunction with the auto show to now kind of bridging it and moving it forward. And, you know, you made some good comments about how philanthropic and involved in the community dealers are. And it was a good way for us, especially with this show being a public show, to really demonstrate that for us, because, you know, prior to this event, you know, we've presented checks to charities that are, you know, pretty significant amounts, but there weren't really eyeballs there to see it. And, you know, we felt like as the association that was maybe a void that we could help fill. Those are great at advertising. They're great at marketing. They'll put their name and their vehicle, their brand everywhere and anywhere. But the moment you ask them to brag about their charitable engagement,
right,
they just clam up, right? And understandably so. Like, that's just not, they want to brag about that. They just feel like they feel a duty and a responsibility to do that in their communities. It's one of the things that makes me really proud to work for them. And I felt like when we began kicking around ideas and we started talking about this event, one of the components, or one of the them was, look, this will give us a lot of eyeballs, you know, about what we're doing in the community. It'll give us an opportunity to market that this show, you know, for 6 months leading in is all going to raise money for charity, and it's all from the dealers. And then we're going to present these big Happy Gilmore checks on the stage to the charities, and we'll have a lot of content after the fact as well, with some folks that are helping us there. But all in all, it was a great night. So we're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and I'm really proud of our dealers in Central Ohio that have leaned in, and especially our board, who's kind of, you know, put their trust and faith in us. Something that, you know, really hasn't been done anywhere else in the country, and it seems to be going all right. So,
yeah, I love the idea, because you're right. You know, dealers don't give for the publicity, right? They give because most of them feel like it's an important part of being a member of the community, right? And they're proud of that, and they do it for organizations that they care about and that they think make an impact. But I think this is a great way, especially as an ADA, to highlight that, right? To share that, to put a little bit of that giving front and center. And I think it does two things. One, it shines a different light on the dealer body in the public eye, right? So it does that, but it also shines a light on giving back for anybody that wants to, right? For somebody that's, you know, it just brings it front of mind when you have these events that are high energy, they're extremely positive. You're showing how others are giving. You know, it can bring others along too. When you have the public that sees it, it's like, oh yeah, you know what? I do want to get involved. Or maybe some of these charities, you mentioned Charity Newsies and Canine Companions. Maybe we can talk about those a little bit too. And also I'm interested in how you went about selecting those, but you know, you highlight these two charities, and now maybe there's folks out there that want to get involved with those or want to give to those, which I think is a great benefit of doing something like this that's in the public eye.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's a great point. We actually made it a point on the stage to talk about them, and during our presentation, we don't just like bring them out and hand them a check. We introduce them, we hype them up, we bring them out, and like, kind of like they're the rock star. They're the star of the show with their executive director, and we talk about what they're doing. And, you know, previously in the night, I was on the stage highlighting some of what their involvement is, and we make sure that they've got, you know, like a booth or whatever at the show, so that people, you know, we haven't solicited necessarily like via a QR code for people to actually give money that night. Again, I mean, they've already bought a concert ticket, so they're already supporting the show. But we do highlight for them, like, hey, you can go over and talk to these folks, because there are ways to get involved with these organizations. And, you know, the rising tide floats all boats here. It's just kind of it's a good message for us. And it kind of dovetails well with some of the other things we're doing to highlight our dealers' charitable involvement in their communities, not just in Central Ohio, but statewide.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I'm hoping maybe you can also get into the mechanics of this a little bit, like how, because like you mentioned, there's not a lot of these going on out there. But I think it's a good idea and maybe something that could be replicated throughout the country. Or, maybe if it's not a concert, maybe it's a different public type of event, something that fits the community that would be interested in it. So how do you go about making something like this happen? I mean, is it as simple as contacting the venue and working through them to make everything happen, or how complex is it? How much time do you need? What are some of the big maybe hurdles that you had to overcome to make it happen?
Yeah, we learned a lot in year one, I can tell you that. So when we started, we kind of started making calls ourselves. I think we maybe were a little bit blind, or we underestimated the skill set required to do something like this. And so it was funny. I'll tell you a funny story. So we started making calls to agencies that represented artists to try to, and it was like, we're not hearing back from anybody. And I finally got a friend of a friend on the phone that would shoot me straight. And he was like, look, if you have never produced a concert before, no artist is going to go rely on you to do a good job when they could just go with a Live Nation or another producer or whatever. And we kind of thought to ourselves, oh, well, duh, I guess I'm glad someone was willing to tell me the truth here, because we were beating our head against the wall for a little while. But we got connected with the right folks. We kind of are dealers, and we have had a long-standing relationship with iHeartMedia in Central Ohio. So they kind of helped introduce us to a couple of people that could be helpful. And then in turn, we gained a lot of credibility and legitimacy as far as someone that's going to put on a show that is going to be successful. It's going to be promoted properly. All of the things that they are kind of evaluating and looking for. Obviously, the venue plays a part of it. So one of our dealer groups, actually in Central Ohio, the Reichert organization, has the naming rights for automotive on that venue, and they waived their right of first refusal for automotive for us for that evening, so we can host that event there and solicit other dealers and other line make groups and all the folks that get involved that are not necessarily them to host this. They're certainly a great organization that's very philanthropic, just like a lot of our dealers are. And so we kind of spun that up in year one, and Tyler Hubbard was actually available, which was really, really fortunate for us. And he did a great job, put on a great show. And then we had a little more time to have a more traditional ramp up in year two, but kind of put all the same people in place with Cracker Jack Media and Ledge Entertainment and iHeart and ourselves, and our Central Ohio Honda dealers leaned in again as the presenting sponsor. And so, after year one, it helped because we were on everyone's budget at that point. Prior it was like, hey, we're trying to stand up this concert, and everyone's like, yeah, well, we discussed budgets, 6 months ago. So where were you? But I think we're growing. I think we're headed the right direction, and hopefully there'll be a year three, and we'll have another great night for charity. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So one other thing on the concert, I'm curious. You mentioned the Central Ohio Honda dealers. How involved? You mentioned Reichert. How do those dynamics play out? Right? How many is it? Is it kind of all one cohesive group that's trying to make things happen? Is everything? Are you running the show as the OADA? I don't know. How do the interactions work? Who's taking point? Is it distributed? Is it kind of all centralized? How does that organization work, and how do those relationships work when trying to execute an event of this scale?
Yeah. So the execution for our dealers, I think, remains pretty similar to what it has been in the past with our private industry only charity gala. So
okay.
Columbus Auto Dealers Association, who's effectively putting the show on, they've got a board, and it's a dealer board. And so we'll meet with them regularly, and we've got a list of all the different sponsors and vendors that they use and all the different partners and folks. And we'll try to, assign responsibilities to make phone calls and send emails and generate support for that charitable event. Much like we did in the past. That was when it was only industry only. And so our board does a lot of heavy lifting. So credit to those dealers that are on the board to do that. And then the dealers across Central Ohio, whether they're on the board or not, they'll get solicited and they'll have an opportunity to jump in, whether it's a dealer group or an individual point, or some of them take it to their their line make, their LMA, tier 2, and jump in that way. Central Ohio Chevy dealers in particular come to mind on that. And so there's a variety of ways that folks, get involved to support it. The part that's maybe different, and it probably doesn't impact our board as much. They obviously set the budget and they help us with some of those decisions, but is the public facing component, right? Because that's
Sure.
the different piece. And so, we'll work to with iHeart in particular, and then also with the media buyer and a show promoter, and try to generate support. And we're all over the radio and Spotify and streaming and broadcast and all the different places that you would think that you would promote a concert. Wherever you hear about a normal concert, that's where you're going to hear about ours. And we try to hammer home that it's concert for a cause, and that it's going to benefit 2 incredible charities. And so we kind of go about it that way. You asked me earlier, I mean to blow past this question, but how are the charities selected? So
Yeah.
So our dealers on the board, we solicit nominations from our dealers in Central Ohio, and then our dealers on the board vote on those nominations. So, if you're a dealer watching this in Central Ohio, be sure to submit your favorite charity to our board for consideration in future years, because we kind of evaluate it, based on a few criteria, but we try to look at things like, have we supported them in the past? What's their reach and their span in Central Ohio? Are they very focused in area, or do they kind of cover a similar geographic area to what our dealer body in Central Ohio covers? And then what is their cause? We've tended to lean into, veterans and children's charities, maybe more than anything else. But it doesn't mean that we haven't done some other represented and helped some other great organizations too. So it's we've got some flexibility there, but we just try to create a good night and highlight the charities and highlight the work that our dealers are doing in their communities. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Again, I think it's just a fantastic way, great idea, and a way to bring a lot of this community involvement into the spotlight, which is something that is just fantastic that you guys are doing. I do want to shift gears while I have you, Zach, and talk a little bit also about what you're focused on and what the Ohio ADA is focused on when it comes to legislation. I mean, that's obviously a huge part of your role and what the ADA does for dealers. What are some of the biggest things that you're looking at in Ohio right now on behalf of the dealers?
Yeah, so that's kind of the primary focus, obviously, of our organization. I think if you ask dealers, like, what does OADA do for you? They're going to gravitate towards legal and legislative responsibilities,
right?
Regulatory environment, that kind of thing. And so I think those are probably the 2 things that are probably popping the most right now. Are there's always issues with direct sales popping around the country, sort of that challenge, and then obviously in Washington D.C., but also with state AGs around the country. You've seen a big push from the FTC and with state AGs around transparent pricing, and the fact that, is the consumer paying when they walk out the door? Does that number look like the number that was advertised to them when they walked in the door?
Right.
And so there's a lot of pressure there that I think will continue to make the industry better. Competition makes the industry better. I at the same time, but obviously everyone needs to be on a level playing field, and in that regard, and I think that it's long term. I think it's healthy for our industry, certainly, but there's a factor of there's some uncomfortability, I suppose, with the transition for some folks on that, and I don't think all of it's necessarily malicious either.
No.
But it's just an adjustment in our industry, like we've had adjustments for the last 100 years. And if there's anybody that's good at adjusting, it's car dealers.
Sure.
The internet was supposed to put them out of business, and now we leverage it to sell and service more than ever. So they've been great at taking headwinds, if you will, or challenges on, and then turning them into opportunities and strengths moving forward. So I think those are the two things probably that are happening around the country right now that me and most of my counterparts are really focused on. And back on the direct sales piece too, I think you've got a lot of spinoffs from current legacy automakers that are drawing a lot of attention. Volkswagen and Scout, and obviously Honda, Sony, Afeela. Some of that component, I think keeps dealers up at night. Understandably so. They've got millions of dollars invested. Some manufacturers are looking for ways to sell around them, which is unfortunate. But those are things that are always top of mind for dealer associations, and certainly ours.
Yeah. So on that direct sales topic, it's an interesting one to me because it doesn't seem like the best model, right? Like logically, if you just take a step back and look at it, the dealer model really truly seems like it's the answer, right? And we already have it, so why mess with it? The other side of the coin is when manufacturers do attempt to do these types of things. I mean, especially in your role, you have to push back, right? You almost can't allow that foothold, because then there's something to stand on. And it's like, no, this isn't the way the industry's set up. It's not the way the law is set up. So you have to kind of push back on that. And I think dealers are in the right to think about it hard and push back on it and prove out again and again and again that the model that we have is the best model for the consumer. It's the best model for the industry, and dealers play a vital role in car sales certainly, but vehicle ownership and making sure that everybody can get where they need to get.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second largest purchase most consumers will ever make, right? And the prices keep going up. That's a whole separate podcast probably, but the economic development and the jobs and the indirect jobs and all of the economic engine that car dealers provide in big cities and small towns across the state, across every state, is tremendous. And I think a lot of the direct sales pressure comes from, not necessarily from a manufacturer that thinks that, hey, if we go direct, we're going to sell more cars. I think that's insane. I can't imagine a scenario where a manufacturer thinks they're going to sell more vehicles by having, 2 or 3 points across a state, and being, a couple hours away from more than, 60% of the population in a state. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? And dealers at their core are convenience providers, and consumers want to be able to buy a car at a fair price, have a good experience, and then when they need service and have a recall performed and all those kinds of things, they want to be able to get that done expeditiously. They want to be able to get it done locally. They want to be able to get it done quickly. Dealers are all very good at that, and the model creates alignment for the consumer on things like warranty recalls and warranty repairs and that sort of thing. So it makes a ton of sense. It offloads cost. I mean, the manufacturer, doesn't have to carry this inventory on their books. And then you kind of look at it and you go, well, why would anybody do this, right? Why would you even want to challenge this thing? And I think what you're seeing is really just the intersection, you're kind of witnessing the intersection of Main Street and Wall Street. And, you've watched, Tesla in particular and some of the stock valuation, which is what all these manufacturers are chasing. That, their C-suite executives, number one priority is to drive up that stock price. And there are a variety of ways to do that. And I think that's the main part that you're looking at when you see folks talking about this, because by going direct and trying to replicate Tesla, which I think they're clearly the exception, not the rule.
Sure.
You end up in a spot where some of these OEMs have very aspirational, maybe rose-colored lenses that they're viewing the world and trying to chase some of that valuation so that they can be considered like a technology company and not a car company, because Wall Street looks at them dramatically different that way.
Right.
And as a result, we end up with these type of headwinds on the ground. But at the end of the day, what happens on Wall Street isn't going to affect a consumer in Worthington, Ohio, or Canton, Ohio, or Lima, Ohio, or what. It's like, hey, they need to get their kids to school. They need to get them to soccer practice. Mom and dad need to get to work and back. And local dealers that are providing value will be there. And, I feel very comfortable about how we're going to navigate this moving forward in our industry nationwide, as well as in Ohio specifically. So it's not going away, but, it's something that we always have to keep our eye on, certainly.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So the other thing to dig into that you mentioned was transparent pricing and how this can have an impact. I've been thinking a little bit about it. I'm curious what your reaction to it is. Is there an opportunity for us, certainly for you as the OADA, to spin this almost positively in the public, right? Because you hear these things like, the FTC sends warning letters and, a new act is passed in California, and it's all about protecting the consumer. And it seems like almost every, I'll call it, news story is framed up in somewhat of a negative light. Right? Dealers are bad, so now there's these regulations. And I don't believe that's true. I mean, I think that there's probably instances where a consumer has felt that they were taken advantage of, if they were or not. I mean, there's two sides to every story. But for a vast majority of dealers and a huge amount of transactions, I mean, the other piece of this too, and I'll come back to the question, sorry, but like the other piece of it is how many vehicles are sold by dealers across the U.S. every single year? Right, not just new cars, but vehicles, 40 million, right? Like, I mean, it's the number of transactions that happen. That's a big number. So if a handful of those transactions, something is missed or something is misrepresented on purpose or not, the percentage of those transactions that anything bad happened is extremely small when you look at it that way. So anyway, to get back to the question, is there a way to frame this up in the public is like, this is a good thing. This is what we all try to do every single day. We support this, and here's how we're handling it. Here's how we've always done it. Because for a lot of dealers, this isn't changing the way that they operate necessarily. It just puts a magnifying glass on them so that they have to make sure every, I is dotted and every T is crossed. But I don't know. I'm curious what your reaction is to that. Is there a way to spin this where we can highlight how good dealers are at this and always have been versus, well, geez, these warning letters are going out and these laws are being implemented, and it paints this negative light, and it kind of, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, I think those are fair comments. To your point, I mean, in Ohio, there were 600,000 new vehicles sold last year. Got a very, very small percentage of consumers that are dissatisfied with, or feel like they were taken advantage of. Now, maybe a larger portion feel like the process takes too long,
sure,
or some of those kinds of things. But that's not. Okay, but
that's because of regulation, right?
Right. Like that's what I was heading. A lot of this paperwork is not the paperwork that a dealer invented; it's paperwork that the government invented, right? So, that being said, what the FTC has done here is not unique to car dealers, I mean, they've been going after a number of industries. I think the hotel industry, the sporting and ticketing concert event industry. Oddly enough, we were talking about concerts, but anybody who's bought concert tickets has looked at a $50 ticket turn into $85 by the time they have the thing emailed to them, and you're kind of like, what happened here?
Yeah.
And so that's always something that I think folks are just reasonable consumers want to know what their out the door price is. I think that's a fair thing. That's something that everyone's accustomed to when they go buy something, whether it's at a retail store, whether they're financing it or what have you. Is it's got a price. It's probably going to get taxed, and tax, title, registration, and doc fee are usually the items that are sort of not normally or previously having been disclosed, but that's getting limited even further with some of the FTC guidance, and obviously this isn't unique to the FTC. I mean, state AGs have been paying attention to this for a long time as well, and many have ramped up as a result of what the FTC is doing here. But long term, I think it's healthy for the industry. And are there everyone wants to gravitate towards these quote unquote bad actors. It's like the vast majority of automobile dealers have great reputations. They're doing things the right way. They're trying to help their consumers. I think that reputations are funny, right? They take long time to build and to maintain and to grow, and you can tear them down in 15 minutes, right, by doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. So, dealers have great reputations in their community as a whole. They're incredibly philanthropic, as we've, and I think they're headed the right direction. But this is guidance around pricing transparency in our industry, like you're seeing guidance around pricing transparency in other areas. And again, long term, I think it's healthy for our industry. I think it helps it helps take away one of these these arrows that upset consumers will shoot at local car dealers, and that they got ripped off. And I think pricing is a funny thing, right? I mean, these vehicles keep getting more expensive. It's more of a burden for consumers. The vast majority of consumers are buying a vehicle because they have to buy a vehicle, not because they want to. So, when you get hit with a $4,500 service bill on your car that's got 190,000 miles on it, it's kind of like, hey, I've got a decision to make here. Are we gonna fix this thing, or are we gonna go buy a new one? And that may result in some budgeting conversations with mom and dad at home, and there's just a lot of variables that go into this, and quite frankly, dealers will set prices to some extent as best they can, but obviously the manufacturers and incentives play a role in this as well. And I want to make sure that we mention them also, because they are our partners. And if the better that they control their inventory levels and their pricing structures and their incentives, the less likely the chance is for a consumer to have a bad experience, or to buy a car, have a good experience, and find out a week later that his neighbor bought the same car and was eligible for some crazy stair-step program that resulted in a $2,500 discount, and now all of a sudden he's upset. And so those are all components of pricing, and consumers feeling like they got treated fairly in this process. And I think that this is just one piece of something that can help the industry long term. Certainly, third party advertising sites, the way that those prices are displayed, and I think some of them have made some strides there to improve the layout of those ads and make sure that they are in fact compliant, because dealers can't control some
Sure.
of that. They don't have the framework ability to manage some of those numbers. The third party sites will in many instances put those numbers into particular boxes, and hopefully that's now jiving with what the FTC is after and what a lot of state AGs around the country are after. So.
Yep. No, good points. Well, Zach, hey, I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me. It's been a fun conversation. I think kind of two different conversations almost melded into one, but it was great. I appreciate you sharing some insight. Before we hop off, though, I mean, anything that we didn't talk about that we should, or anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and enjoyed talking with you.
Yep. Thanks so much. So Zach Doran, president at Ohio Automobile Dealers Association. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully we can do it again sometime soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Well, I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Zach Doran, president of the Ohio Automobile Dealers Association. I know I certainly did. Hopefully you were able to take a little bit out of that as far as what they're doing to raise awareness and also promote giving and giving back to the community. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. And make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.